We're continuing with our series of business conversation interviews with executives that we want to talk with around Europe and in Russia. I'm very pleased today to be speaking with Katia Gorokhova, who is the Managing Director of Kelly Services Russia and Poland. Katia, we've known each other a long time, and that would be at least a decade. So I know something about you and I know a lot about your company. But could you tell us, where did you come from? How did you arrive where you are? And then secondly, what do Kelly Services do?
Thanks, Danny. It's nowadays also Poland and Hungary. I would say like it's Central Eastern Europe. And also I have some stretched responsibilities for RPO for EMEA and for permanent recruitment. So stretching roles, it's a new trend, I would say, in Kelly Services. So we are all a little bit stretched, not like directly in the region, but also to some products which we oversee. And some of us have stretched roles. So I think it's probably interesting for you to hear. And talking about me, I have a technical background. I graduated from the State Technical University of St. Petersburg. Have a major in mechanical physics. So, and it's a very long journey to Kelly Services through 7 years with Unilever in a sales role, in a senior sales roles, and then, to the HR industry. So I'm more than 20 years with Kelly, working, starting in St. Petersburg, moving to Sweden as a country manager, and then moving to Russia and like coming as a regional manager for Kelly Services. But Kelly is like my motherland, I would say, in terms of job tenure, clearly. So Kelly Services is a staffing company, but actually I wouldn't say just staffing, because we do provide HR solutions with outsourcing, temporary staffing, permanent recruitment process outsourcing, HR consulting. So it's a US-based company, organized, one of the pioneers of the temporary staffing industry, organized in 1946. And we still like in the top 5-10 agencies in the world. In Russia, we are one of the top 3, and clearly probably number 2 right now, and clearly keeping our leadership for many years. And that's in a couple of words, working with a lot of different industries, customers, providing HR solutions to our customers.
Thanks very much, Katia. And I'm very interested there with your own personal education in St. Petersburg. As you know, my doctorate is in Soviet political economy, so we have different educational backgrounds, but we end up here talking together. Good. I had forgotten your Unilever period as well, so that's interesting. Obviously, you got consumer product experience and so forth. Great. Just as a starting question, Katia, we've had everybody's had a difficult, unusual year, 2020, the COVID year. Maybe 2021 for parts of Europe will be, another partial COVID year. And given your geographical responsibility, I think my question would be, how are you seeing the business globally, but then more in Europe and then more in your countries in Central Europe, and then we'll talk about Russia later?
Probably people just get used to COVID. They need people. They need people permanent, temporary. They need people in any way to accomplish their tasks. And that's why our industry found their way and actually started to grow back again. So that's in 2 words. And I think it's across the globe. So I think it's across the globe, and it's for EMEA, and it's for US, it's for Asia, and it's for Russia, clearly.
I was probably going to do this later, but I'll jump in now because we're very free flow on this. But I'm sitting in Vienna. The Czech Republic has the highest level of fatalities per population of any place in the world, which is very frightening. So my detailed question is then, Russia is something else, and we'll talk about that in a moment, loose lockdown. Are you seeing the mood and the business environment in Central Europe not so strong, or is it still buoyant?
Well, I think I think the mood is generally quite positive, and that's, I think, I can speak more about Poland and Hungary, and the production is working, people are needed, you know, also in the shared service centers, because these countries, they focus a lot on the global shared service centers, and they outsource for the rest of EMEA for a lot of solutions and services from these countries, and they're quite well adjusted to work from home. Their internet systems working fine, so they found their ways both in production where they need a physical presence, but also within, you know, digital space when people work from home. So I would say the spirit is rather good, and there is a lot of big companies who do have their outsourcing sites in these countries, and they can't afford to stop it. You know, they need to produce for the rest of EMEA, or they need to do services for the rest of EMEA or out of these countries. So I would say the spirit is fine. Plus, it's a lot of younger people working in these industries for multinational who probably more resilient to COVID generally.
Thanks, Katya. No, it's fair view because generally, as you know, we're looking at Central Europe a lot as well as Russia, and the business, the business is going well or very well. And you've answered the question. I just thought, what was the mood? So that's interesting indeed. Anyway, that's good introduction. Thank you. But now we come to the big baby, Russia and CIS as well. And we've talked a lot about it together and in the webinars we do together with you. But, one trend, of course, is that Russia has not got such severe lockdowns really since last summer. There's a different dynamic. So my question is, let's kick off on Russia. What are the big trends you're seeing in the market with your customers in Russia?
Well, the customers, especially the big customers, of course, they are active. They came back in the middle of summer for the production, and there is a lot of delayed demand, I would say, for production, for services, for goods, but also for people. So because no one really was hiring for several months or for half a year, now suddenly everybody realized that the business is growing and they need people to support this business. So that's why actually the demand went quite high, with quite an extreme in 1 or 2 months. So we felt it in August, September of last year. Both, first it started with blue collar and basic professions, because it probably didn't stop. They needed careers and professions like that during the COVID, because the logistics was very active, the delivery was very active, but also the factories, when it was allowed to open up the factories, they needed people. And then it came later with a professional specialists, because there was also some turnover. Some people left and they needed replacement. They were not replaced for some time, but suddenly everybody realized they can't do further without people. So from this point of view, I would say the Russian market is quite active. And maybe smaller businesses suffered more serious, and they're not capable to come back so fast, but the bigger business and the medium-sized business clearly was quite resilient.
Just, we can jump around a lot now, and I will do with you. You mentioned blue collar, white collar. I think a year ago, there was a deep concern globally and in Russia. Oh my God, most of our blue collar workers are working on infrastructure, roads, and in factories. And most of our white collar are working at home, with their coffee, watching Netflix and enjoying themselves. I don't hear about that much these days. And I think, am I correct in thinking that companies have resolved that, or has it not become such an issue and business goes on, white collar, blue collar?
You mean the productivity and the efficiency, or what?
Yeah, no. Do the blue collar people dislike the white collar people because they have a very nice, easy job and they're comfortable at home, and the blue collar people do all the work? Is there that resentment and therefore demand for better treatment, blue collar, or is that all wrong?
Well, honestly, I might have my personal opinion. I don't have a killer opinion on that. personally, I think it was probably the case, especially in the heart of COVID, when the couriers were bringing their own, parcels to you, and you were like coming safely to pick them up. They clearly hated you at this moment, and that's my personal observation. I think it's probably not the case anymore after the unlock was happening and people got used to that. So, well, plus a lot of, blue collars actually got some welfares at certain points from the government, especially in the Moscow area. It was a good job done by the Moscow government. So a lot of people got some welfares to support. So it was not so bad.
Right. No, thank you, Katya. It was an open question. I didn't really have the answer. I just wanted to know what you felt. I'll keep on with the blue collar worker and something you know about a lot. I've heard stories, and we did a survey question, with the COVID and migration, Central Asia, the Caucasus, that, those people had gone back home. There were fewer migrants, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million fewer. So the supply of blue collar was less. And then when the demand picked up or infrastructure carried on, there was a shortage. We've got about a third of our clients who agree with that, but equally another third say, no, we've not seen much. So again, it's a sort of a debatable question, but I think you've got your finger on the pulse on this one. What's been happening with blue collar in the last year, and where are we now? And migration?
Well, for us as an agency to find the blue collar workers is a big challenge right now. So I would say after this breakout for COVID, especially those companies who dismissed people, they couldn't get them back because people are either getting some support from the government or found some other jobs and were very offended and didn't want to come back to these like medium sort of salaries, not really high salaries. So they didn't want to come back to work for these customers. So, and generally, due to, like you said correctly, due to lack of supply of migrants to the country, and we estimate up to 6 million migrants went away, and there were more jobs available on the constructions for the Russian citizens. And if they needed the job, they could go and work for the government construction, which was working actually instead of migrants. And that's dragged, some of their supply from our customers as well. Because that's one reason. The second reason, a lot of workers, they got the government support. Maybe it was like 12, 15,000 rubles a month, 20 for Moscow, but still it was something. So what they did, they got the government support plus some work illegal for some illegal agencies or some illegal companies where they could get another 20, and that's 40 was sort of okay for them not to think about another job for quite a lower salary in the regions. So generally, the salaries for blue collars went very much up, and the most smart of our clients, they just indexed by 15-20% the salaries, not 5%, not 10%, 15-20%. And that's very correct because it's still not enough of supply, and also people are not ready to migrate. They are not ready to come from one place to another because they're afraid of COVID, they're afraid of, travel. They would rather keep the work in their own village where they can walk or take a bus to that than moving to some other region out of their family, having some fear for COVID as well. So that's why all in all, it's a huge challenge with blue collar workers. And interesting, I was talking to my colleagues yesterday in EMEA. It's not only in Russia. It's actually, I talked to people from France and Portugal. They confirmed the same fact. And that it's where everybody's thinking, well, it's not enough of a job. People should be happy to get a job. But actually, no, we can't find the candidates. And the reasons are probably quite similar to ours. And the government support is also the major reason because people used to do nothing, like enjoying Netflix, sitting at home, getting some minimum wage, but still it was enough to feed them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to ask you, touched it a little bit. The, the power of Moscow and the strength of Moscow and money and the attraction. And you've already said, people don't want to move much. I can well understand people don't want to leave Moscow to go anywhere. That's historically true. But what you say about people moving in general is very interesting. Are we, even with blue collar rising, and I agree with you, 15, 20%, even with that trend, are there still regional variations? What I'm thinking of, Katya, I mentioned to you, one of my friends said a friend of his had a factory job in Voronezh at 45, 50,000 rubles. He moved to Moscow, become a delivery boy, and he got 75, 80,000, just as a sample story. Is that big discrepancy, Moscow and everywhere else, and St. Petersburg? Is Moscow still the big driver for salaries?
Well, in terms of production, it's difficult to compare because we don't really have a production in Moscow. It's like very seldom. So Moscow is rather than this new role, which is in between of blue collar and white collar, which is Korea, for example, or someone's working in La Moda or Wildberries. This is like a warehousing person, but also like an office person. So this is something in between. It's not comparable directly, with the blue collars in the regions because factories are in the regions. So from this point of view, Moscow is paying generally better, but not always, because if you look at even in some e-commerce stores, like the brands I called, they claim they pay 50, 60,000 rubles, but they don't. Actually, they cheat quite a lot. And I'm sorry, I have some examples with younger people who were cheated like that. So I think probably with the self-employed people who are working for Yandex or delivery, they can potentially work 75,000, but they really work not 12 hours, they probably work 16 hours. So Moscow pays more, but actually demands much more. So I think in the factories, in the regions, people work more reasonable shifts with more reasonable hours.
Right. No, thank you so much, Katya. That was going to be a follow-up question, the ruble sums. And for our listeners, I'll put it into context. The official Rosstat number, the average national manufacturing wage is about 47,000 rubles. That's the national average. That would include, the weakest regional ones as well. But like you say, the claim of 55 to 65 in Moscow, but to get I'm just repeating what you said because it's important, to get 70,000 in logistics would mean a lot of work indeed. And I don't disagree. Absolutely. Absolutely. We've talked a good bit there about blue collar, and it's very important. A follow-up question just came to me. I think it's an obvious question, but I want your answer. With, the change now and the loosening and global loosening, getting back to normal, you said people are reluctant to travel, but in 4, 6 months' time, 9 months, do you think a lot of the migration will be back and will getting back a little to not normality, but there'll be more migrants and these divergences will be less? So I'm asking you what you think for 9 months out.
Well, this is my personal opinion. I think it's very connected to vaccination and looking at Israel, who just canceled the mask regime from Monday because 74% of Israel is vaccinated. I think it's the way to go because when you are vaccinated, you are not afraid to get the COVID and not to be at home when you are sick. So as Russia is quite slow with vaccination, I think it might take some longer time, maybe 6 months. It depends on the government which job they will do to push people to vaccinate. And I think we are not doing a good job so far.
No, you're right, Katya. The mood in Russia is pretty good socially and out and about on the streets and everything. And as you say, business-wise, and Sputnik's got a good reputation. Its reputation has improved a lot. The Financial Times said it's a very good vaccine. So there we are. But you're absolutely right. The number of people nationally vaccinated is 6, 7%. But of course, we have low levels around Europe as well, too. Thanks. Thanks for that question. The move now to white collar, maybe, and managerial and so forth, and office, and mid and low levels in offices. We've talked about the blue collar. What's the dynamics in the white collar and mid management?
Well, it's not as bad as in blue collar, and because just the parent pyramid is getting smaller towards the top, but still, I think it's moving quite active right now, because there was certain turnover natural, there was certain like delayed demand, which suddenly everyone needs people whom they didn't need for 6 months or 9 months. So suddenly everyone wants to hire. My point is, and my question is it going to be forever, or is it going to be end in 6 months when the market will stabilize a little bit? My feeling, it will be stabilized, by the end of the year. But right now, everyone is crazy looking for people on all different professions. And recruiter is probably one of the most demanded profession by each company. True, because everyone needs a recruiter who will hire people for them.
Very true. I agree with you, Katya. I think it's booming now, so to say, and I share your view. I think in 6 months it will inevitably normalize, and I certainly think in 2022 and beyond for sure. Just as a footnote, I think globally and in Russia, business will pick up strongly. There's going to be a bounce back vaccine. The sun is shining through my window. The weather will get better. People outside Russia will get onto terraces more, and that. I think the global stock markets and the Russian one and the price of oil, although the ruble is detached from oil, still having a good oil price is not a problem for Russia. So I do think 21 all through the summer and beyond will be good. I think it will drift through to 22. And then after spring, summer of 22, we might get some more normalization, which would affect, of course, the HR sector as well. One thought I have of, what we're hearing a lot, and you're talking about those dynamics, is moving digitalization, e-commerce. You mentioned La Moda, Wild Berries, and so on. What trends are you seeing for, across the board, e-commerce, logistical support as well, but really mid-level, high-level technical skills for IT companies, for logistics companies, for consumer products? What's the dynamic there in the demand, and also for salaries?
Well, I think the world is getting much more digital, much faster. There was certain acceleration with COVID to become digital, and we all experienced that through, purchasing online and, getting our parcels online. I gave an example with Ozon. So this is for everyone. So, and as I'm not in the industry where e-commerce is sort of separate, just, my people are also digitalized, because all the interviews are online right now, on video via Teams or Skype or whatever, WhatsApp. And the thing is that it really changes our business model a lot, because we don't need to be in the office as much. We can do a lot of, and that's comfortable for everyone, for our recruiters, it's comfortable for our applicants, for our candidates, it's probably comfortable for customers on certain stages. And that's the digital, they change a lot of business models. And I think those companies who have a good digital infrastructure, good systems, ERP systems, or certain systems which allow it to be online, not just on the paper, so it's centrally managed by the system. These companies will win out, Because if you are not prepared, if your internet connections is bad, if you're not in the system, if you're not in the cloud, if you don't have central systems, if you don't keep your eyes on these systems, which allow you to follow up and track the performance of your people, then you're in trouble. So from this point of view, it's a huge acceleration. And luckily we did, actually last year we put investment for the new global EMEA system in Russia. And during COVID, we managed to implement it. It was not easy, but we did.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And during sitting at home, during all these lockdowns, we replaced our systems.
Right, right. Just on the, that demand there that you talked about, not necessarily from Kelly Services, but what you know about the industry generally and the demand for people. I've heard, so I'll give you some framework. I've heard that, the premium for good digital people in terms of salary, I've heard numbers 5 to 15%, which seems reasonable, fingertip. But recently, only a couple, so it's not a sample, of executives said, actually, Danny, the premium we would pay would be much higher. They were consumer product companies who were looking to do more e-commerce. E-commerce only represented for them 8-10% of the business, but it's rising, so it's important. And they said, we would pay a premium 30% plus plus. So just from your own knowledge of market, what do you think is the pressures there?
It's really difficult to make a uniform approach for that, because I would say what companies need are in demand on this sort of like digital strategic marketing specialists who are called product managers or product digitalized managers who know and who can create the new concepts of usage, which is very important for IT companies, the one who can bring some innovation of changing habits or catching up the new habits and trying to develop on that. That's especially with the new applications, etc. I think these specialists are in huge demand, and they will be forever, because it will be progressing and changing every year. There will be new and new and new things created, and these people are very expensive, and that might be young or old, it doesn't matter, because this is like a unique skills. Generally for digital people, I think it will be not costing so much higher soon, because everyone will be digital. So because even older people, they are digital right now, so we are all digital because we don't have any other choice, and that's we will be equalized on that. But the one who innovates the new habits, well, take an example of Yandex. They create all the time the new services, the new roles, the new ideas, the new habits for us, and they push these habits on us. And there are some people behind that who create that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Katya. I want to come back, because we certainly agree with each other. The business numbers and excitement levels in Russia. You've talked about the demand there. You've heard me say, you can confirm, I trust, overall voluntary turnover is down globally. People are still cautious and so forth. But Central Europe and Russia, business is reasonable or good or better. So there is demand for people. And I'm saying to our managing directors for the region, your global headquarters in Europe or America or Japan may think, aha, people are desperate for their jobs, that we can do anything we want with them. And of course, for this region, if it's true for any region, it's certainly not true for ours. And talent can move. So I think, the top 10, 20, 35% of people can leave and find, because you're saying the demand is there. I just want you to reconfirm on that. And then would that mean that poaching, as usual, is prevalent? And also, what I know your view on counter offers, because we've spoken about it before. So what's the churn level? Is talent can move, they're in demand, poaching and counter offers, and anything else on that?
Well, That's absolutely true that, good people have a lot of offers right now. So they're being headhunted. So I think our salaries will grow despite we already get some merit increases. I think we will make a lot of counter offers, and our customers should be prepared for that. And my view is that on the counter offers that, well, if the specialist brings value to the business for another 6 months or 1 year, I would rather make a counter offer and keep this person for another 6 months or a year, instead of being offended that my culture was not really supported. I would look selfishly on that, thinking if I can get this person temporarily for another more year and he or she can make me more money for that, I would rather retain. I also, my position for boomerangs is positive. So I always get boomerangs. And I think if people, they maybe started, let's say, their career at Kelly and they didn't see anything else. And then after 10 years, they left finally for the customer working, and they realized that this culture is actually probably was better for them and they want to come back. I'm always quite happy, because people should be able to compare and make a solid decision to come back. So that's my view on that. And if it's a talent, I would always get that. So without getting any bad feelings for that.
Thank you, Katya. Very good to avoid the bad feelings. I liked your answer on the counter offer as well, because there are different views, but I think yours is very realistic and pragmatic. If we can get a good person for another 6, 12 months, let's keep them. Yeah, I've not heard it put so bluntly, but I think you're absolutely correct. No illusions. You make the counter offer, maybe in 6, 9, 12, 15 months, they do go anyway, but at least you've had the good service from them. Very good, thank you. On a more general theme, and again, this is more your personal knowledge of the market and everything that's going on. We've got a big demand for people. We've got some migration issues, but globally, you talked about young people. Globally, there's a brain drain going on from all parts of the world. It's not a Russian problem. It's a global problem. And, a lot of young people and talented people want to go and work in Germany or Switzerland or Britain or America, to put it bluntly. Is that a pressure in the market that you're seeing a lot, or is it manageable and it's just part of life?
I think with the digitalization, this pressure will be going less, because if you take an IT world and like we work with some IT communities for perm consultants across of EMEA, so we can place the Russian programmer working for Swiss company without relocating to Switzerland, or we can put a Russian consultant or Polish consultant in IT to work for France, so if they speak French, and there is no need to move. And the salaries is still much higher than the local one, but you pay your local course and you keep, relationship with your friends in your own language. So I think with digitalization, as there is no demand to be in the office, is getting less pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And from this point of view, they are paid better than in the local market, clearly. So we have some IT consultants. We do have a big IT practice at Kelly Services, and we do outsource a lot of solutions with a good salaries, I would say, to US. Why not? And consultants, they stay in Russia, maybe somewhere in Novosibirsk or Omsk.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think I've got two closing questions, Katya. One is, and then ask anything you want to say about anything. Um, you mentioned culture. Western companies with your experience as well. There tends to be a cliche that Western companies are more reliable, more stable. We've had a crisis period, and would the Russian staff generally be better off in a Western company with that environment? Russian companies are more volatile. In the good times, they're good. Question, in the bad times, are they not so good? Is that a trend that's a real one, or is it over exaggerated, or what, in your opinion?
Well, we did some surveys before, I would say, the COVID crisis. And whenever we did the survey, the candidates, at least our candidates, Cali candidates, they've been always voting for international company. Not necessarily Western, but international with a good brand name and reputation. I think it's probably and then the second one was a Russian branded company with a strong Russian brand name, and then all the other companies. So I think for them, even after the crisis, it's probably even stronger because they experienced a lot of unfair dismissals during the COVID crisis. And right now, they know that companies who, pay salaries fairly, who pay legally salaries and not in the envelope, and they really try to do their best. They try to retain, or if they dismiss people with some packages and things like this. So I would say it's even probably getting stronger right now. The international brand first, and then the Russian strong brand second, I would say.
Right, thanks. And obviously, we know the Russian branded companies, and of course, there are many and a growing number of good ones. But I take the point and agree with you. My closing off question, but then for any wrap up, regards expatriates. And again, it's more your personal fingertip and experience. And globally, I'm hearing Dubai, pick any place in the world. Well, the expatriate model was always under some pressure with localization historically, but now with borders closed, expatriates, in their home country managing remotely, like you say. So in some ways, it might not be an issue. You could even have, your expatriate living abroad managing the company. Could you? Question mark. But my question is, the trend with expatriates, in Russia, are we seeing more localization, more Russian staff getting the CFO managing director's position because of COVID? And do you think that will be the case? So I think the first question is, what trend do you personally see globally in Central Europe and Russia on expats? Anything?
I think for the Western life and for American life, I think it's probably going to be less dominance by expatriates, and there probably more trust or more democracy on that. With the Asian world, though, I see clearly that Chinese and Korean companies and Asian companies, they are so strict on their own processes and cultures. They don't really believe that Russians can cope with that, and Russians are not really capable to cope with that. It's so different. So they really have to put a lot of expatriates in Russia to try to build their culture in our market, which is very different from ours in a lot of ways. With the Western world, we are not so different, and I think it's easier. That's one point for me. So the second point with expatriates, clearly with the Western world, if you take my example, I'm responsible for lots of European projects when I need to get together. Like yesterday, I made a call for Perm community. There was 120 consultants on this call from Portugal, from France, from Italy, from everywhere, from Poland, which I had to lead on sort of crowdsourcing way, when you don't need to be sitting in any countries, because you don't really know in nowadays which country you manage. You manage the community of all sort of different nationalities. So I think the leadership role in terms of the regional responsibility is shifting, and we becoming more and more like world managers, able to get as many cultures and respect them as possible. And at least, though, like, of course, Hungarians are very different from Poland and French are very different from Italian, but we are all very much similar at the end, with the same values and the same beliefs and the same principles. And that's very possible, I think. And it doesn't matter if you're Russian or Italian or French, we all talk the same language. So I think from this point of view, the role of expatriates should be changing generally, the whole concept, because it's getting much more community leadership rather than, like certain one country leadership. That's my view on that.
That's a very, very good answer, Katja, and one I've not heard before. And I made my own notes. I think the community leadership and world manager were very, very, strong and good, precise phrases. Very good. Because you're right, it was shifting before, but not with the dynamic you've talked about. It was more, we don't need John in Moscow because it's cheaper to have Ivan and he knows the language and culture, etc. But no, it's a big shifting dynamic along with the work from home one. That's great. Thank you. Katja, I'm very happy with all the topics we've talked about and your responses. But is there anything we've left out or you would like to elaborate on more or anything?
Probably yes. I don't remember about that right now. Not such a burning points on this conversation.
Right, Katja, no problem. But I would just repeat, because we started with Central Europe, your responsibilities there, and then you were talking at the end in the very last answer about, the similarities and the divergences, of course. Central Europe, by the way, just to share with you, as you well know, is quite a hybrid region. Is it emerging market? The answer is well, yes, and well, no. Is Prague an emerging market? Yeah, those kind of questions. I would finish. I have something left over while I was talking there. Quality of people. I said I would ask this, but I didn't bring it in. The cliches are that, Russian Central European staff were 10, 15 years ago fantastic. Discipline, hardworking, ability, education. That had trended down a little bit, marginally, but that they were still good. And just to share with you, I'm loading the question in one direction, but I'd like to see where you are on the spectrum. As you know, we've had 10, 20, 50 executives tell me in the last 3 months the quality of our Russian people, really showed out in 2020. Difficult period, challenges, how they adapted, their responses, and famously crisis management, etc. Would you endorse that totally, or do you have nuances?
I would probably look at that from the different angle. As working a lot with Eastern European and also with my stretch roles, I work a lot with Western Europeans. I would say in general, especially like taking Germany, it's also my country for recruitment process outsourcing. I would say it's not because of quality or knowledge or no, Eastern Europe is not better. What's Eastern Europe is better, it's a passion. We are more heroic. If the trouble comes, we put our life to sacrifice, to help for the company, for our families. And the Western world and some countries, they're more like trending for work-life balance for a number of reasons. The taxes are there higher and things like this. And why to work so much more if I pay so much taxes already and things like this. But I think the passion, the heroism is actually made Eastern Europe more resilient during the crisis compared to Western Europe. The ability to survive, the ability to go through all the wars, and changing from socialistic to capitalistic. So I think that's probably still is, and that's the benefit clearly. But once you work with the Western European colleagues and they understand the value and the commitment and the mission, they're also quite happy to give more to the team on the table. But you need more time to convince them to do that.
Thank you. Katja, talking about the heroism, commitment, and resilience of the Central Europeans and Russians is a brilliant way to finish off. And I would concur with that, of course. I think I was saying the same thing before in a different way, but you put it in a more a different emotional angle, which is very, very positive. And I think that's also a great way for us to finish today on a highly positive note. Thanks for, I think you've reinforced what I was thinking about the business trends. I knew what was going on, obviously, with HR trends, but you've underlined it and made it more forceful about, the demand for people. That's been made clear for me. And I think a lot of your remarks are going to be very insightful for people who do know the market and HR. And of course, many listeners who are general management who need more of an insight and fresh look at it. So thanks a million for that, Katja.
Thank you. It was very interesting interview.